it's not safe to reopen schools, and that full stop. Unless we have no transmission, we shouldn't reopen in-person schools. So I have some slides on it. I will start with saying, like, reminding what is R0 and R value. So R0 says how many people on average one infected person will infect when there is no vaccination, no any public health measures, and everybody is susceptible. So R0 was 3 for the variant that infected Europe. And now we created, okay, we let the virus spread and it could mutate, and it mutated, it evolved into much faster, much more spreadable variant, and it are basically doubled. So now one person, instead of infecting 3 people, can infect between 5 and 8. So basically by not controlling it, by not eliminating the virus, by letting it go, we moved from something relatively slow to the virus that is very fast. So that's R0. R says how many people will be infected by one person on average under certain conditions, so under certain public health measures or under a certain level of vaccination. And here I come so this graph shows on y-axis it's daily new cases, and here is time in days. So it's illustration for original strain with R0 of 3. And I was trying to illustrate if we could get to herd immunity by vaccines only with the original variant. So getting to herd immunity is basically saying that moving the R0 to R value to below 1, so that the one person will infect less than one other person, and the outbreak will die out by itself. So if we would have 75% of total population vaccinated and super effective vaccine that will be 93% efficient against overall transmission, then we could reduce R value from 3 to 0.9 by vaccines only. And it would be in the super optimistic conditions. If less people would be vaccinated or the vaccine efficiency would be smaller, we wouldn't be able, even for original variant, to get to herd immunity. So blue line here shows, so that's the theoretical. Blue line shows what we would have, what we really had with public health measures without vaccines in the first wave. So for example, New Zealand get R of 0.5. Victoria, Australia are 0.65. So Austria 0.54. So just with public health measures, we were able to do more than the best vaccines could do alone. They are amazing tool, of course, but for controlling the spread, bundle of public health measures is much stronger than the best vaccines could be. But if last year we would have vaccines on top of public health measures, then we could end pandemic in just 2 weeks if we add those two effects together. So, but now we have more transmissible variant, Delta, which is on average twice more transmissible than original one. And what does it mean? It means that what we could do with public health measures before, now the R is twice this, so 0.6 times 2 is 1.2. So if we wouldn't have vaccines with public health measures of the same strength like in the first wave, we would have still the exponential growth. But what it means for vaccines, if we would have 64% of total population vaccinated and 60% efficiency against transmission, which is probably a realistic guess, like we don't know really how effective the vaccine is against transmission, then it would reduce, if we would use only the vaccines, it would reduce R from 6 to 3.7, so still very fast exponential growth. But if we combine both vaccines and public health measures, we can get R value down to 0.7. And so we can stop Delta. It is possible. It is possible to control it. It's possible to eliminate it, but we need both. We cannot have just vaccines on vaccines only with everything open. Just won't stop it. It's mathematically impossible. And also what is important here is that, for me, this green line is that so we generated vaccines that are amazing, But at the same time, we let virus mutate and evolve into more powerful ones. So we just compensated one with the other. And we are still, in the matter of control of the spread, we are on like at the same state we've been a year ago, or even worse. And here the yellow line shows, I wanted to show what would happen if we now focus totally on vaccinating more people. So not 64% of total population, but 85%. It would reduce this, it would slow down the rate of spread, but it wouldn't bend it down. So basically focusing on public health measure is much more important than focusing on vaccinating few percent more. As an added layer, it's important to vaccinate more people, but just by itself, it won't solve the pandemic. And here is the, if R0 of delta is not 6, but 8, we are even in more trouble, because then combining vaccines and public health measures, still like moderate public health measures, the ones that resulted in first wave in R value of 0.6, it won't bend the curve. So we need more effort to bend this curve. We need stronger public health measures. Fortunately, now we know that COVID is airborne, that it's transmitted through the air, that by proper strong masks and respirators, we can slow down the spread, and by ventilation, which we didn't use in the first wave. So if we put this tool also on, then we still have a chance to bend the curve of delta and eliminate it. But basically, delta is our wake-up call. We need everything we have in our toolbox to stop it, to slow it down. So that was the theoretical calculations, but what real life shows us. So this graph, and it's not linear scale, it's logarithmic scale. So we have like 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, and so on the y-axis. So it's Israel. Israel is 63% of total population is fully vaccinated, and around more than 8% is triple vaccinated now. Still, cases go up very quickly, doubling every 10 days, which is faster growth than it was in third wave, when they were doubling every 13 days. There's no decoupling, so the red points are severe cases. They also go sharply up. The proportion is 2 to 3 times lower than it was in previous waves, but still it's growing. And for comparison, Canada have 65% people vaccinated, US 51, Australia 24, and Vietnam 1.7. But vaccination alone is not solving the pandemic. And here I wanted to show the optimistic graph, like in that how fast we could get to zero. And of course, it was demonstrated in New Zealand, in Victoria, Australia, in Atlantic Canada, that we could get to zero if we keep the restrictions in place and keep vaccinating and keep the R at 0.6 or 0.7. Like in just several weeks, we can stop the community transmission. So it's not what is by governmental media where often it's say, oh, it's lockdowns forever. It's not lockdowns forever. It's just several weeks, and then the life internally can get back to normal.